Hello cruel world. This video outlines 7 horrifying celebrity deaths. So it's something a bit more casual than usual. It's kind of what I'd like to think is an intriguing yet macabre kind of topic. So I've personally chosen cases that are either very mysterious or very gruesome or completely shocking or even like a combination of all of those things. Now, I'll admit this is not my usual topic. Usually I talk about true crime versus mental illness, although once you hear some of these stories, I'm sure you'll agree that there's a tiny little sprinkling of both in at least some of these cases. Just wanted to make something a bit different for my viewers and my followers and my subscribers because I love you so much. So this is a bit of a quirky video. Any silliness or jokes, I hope, are about the circumstances of the deaths rather than the people themselves. There's nothing funny about dying, although arguably a couple of these deaths are a little bit towards the funny side. Anyway, trolls, before you hunch over your cancel bottoms and start to criticize me, I just want to say I'm not here to offend anybody. And you know, I love transsexual, indigenous, vegan cheese, so stay off my back. And also to the families that these celebrities have left behind, I would shout out them and I'd like to send only positive vibes. And I also want to say that everybody on the list has been seen as a legend and is well respected in some form or another. So even though they might have had horrifying deaths, in my mind, we should also celebrate their achievements. You Bombay! Okay, let's get straight into it. Number 7 has to be Sonny Bono. So he was a singer, a producer, a politician. His second wife was Cher, and they formed a singing duet. You might not have heard of them unless you're a bit older. But as their music faded, so did their loves, and they later on divorced. And then he went into politics. Cher moved on to be a big, famous pop star. Possibly one of her most famous songs is "Do You Believe in Love After Life?" Which in retrospect is slightly distasteful lyrics there, Cher. I mean, the dude just died. So Sonny Bono actually died after a skiing accident in 1998. So he was with his third wife and their children at the time in the skiing trip, although at the exact moment of his death, he was on his own and he ran into a tree, ended up having massive head injuries. I suppose that's the problem with off-piste skiing. Once you start, it can be a slippery slope. Okay, let's move on. Hi, I'm Troy McClure. I'm here to discuss number 6, the death of Phil Hartman. So Phil Hartman was a celebrated comedian. He won an Emmy for his work on Saturday Night Live. He did voiceovers, including in The Simpsons, where he played Lionel Hutz, who's the incompetent solicitor, and he also played Troy McClure. And he also played a small role in a film called Jingle All the Way, which is an absolutely terrible film. It's so bad, it's kind of good, featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you haven't seen it, I wouldn't recommend seeing it, but it's also kind of funny. Jamie, it is me, your father. Anyway, I must admit, out of the whole list of people from my list, this man's he's the least known to me, but his death was also the craziest. So he was actually murdered by his wife, called Bryn, on the 27th of May, 1998. They had an argument, and his wife, Bryn, who was addicted to cocaine, was high on cocaine at the time, waited till he went to bed and then shot him with a handgun. She confessed her crime to her friends and then she shot herself dead, leaving 2 orphan children. So, you know, it's not actually that funny in terms of the outcome. As they say, hell hath no fury like the scorn of a suicidal cocaine-addicted woman. Okay, quick interjection. I want to tell you one of my favourite quotes about celebrity, which is, and I quote, "I feel I'm too busy writing history to read it." So, dear viewers, who said that? Answers later on in this episode. Even if you don't know, you could potentially guess, because let's just say that that kind of statement is very on brand for this person. Okay, moving on. Number 5, Brandon Lee, the actor star of The Crow. He died while filming it on the 31st of March, 1993. He was, of course, as you probably know, the son of Bruce Lee, who's an absolute inspiration, a legend, and a martial artist and actor. So Brandon was actually wounded after a blank cartridge was fired out of a prop gun. So what happened was that a real bullet was also lodged in the gun barrel, and so he got shot in the chest and died from his wounds. Incidentally, his father, Bruce Lee, also kind of died under suspicious circumstances, apparently related to an allergic reaction to a medication, although the circumstances are shady, let's put it that way. There are, in fact, rumours and suspicions and even conspiracy theories that Brandon and Bruce Lee were both intentionally killed by underground Chinese mafia as a revenge for Bruce Lee well, there's two theories, either because he shared his secrets in terms of martial arts and Jeet Kune Do with the Western world, or because he didn't pay them extortion money. And I have to say, this is just rumours, there's no evidence, it's all, dare I say it, Chinese whispers. High five.
No.
No? So obviously this case has some echoes of Alec Baldwin. When you see Alec Baldwin, you will see the true ugliness of human nature. So Alec Baldwin, as I'm sure you know, shot somebody called Miss Hutchins, who was a cinematographer, whilst they were rehearsing, and he drew a prop gun whilst filming the film Rust. And if he was standing on the other side of the gun, then maybe Alec Baldwin might have made this list. Okay, let's go back to the quote, and it was, to remind you, I feel like I'm too busy writing history to read it. Who was it? It was, of course, our man, Kanye West. Entrepreneur, millionaire, in my opinion, kind of overrated rapper. Check out my video on him, always be blogging. It's a very old one that I did, about a year old, where I diagnose his mental health issues. I answer questions like, do I think he has bipolar affective disorder? And how does being a celebrity affect his whole symptomatology and his reactions to his symptoms and behaviours? Okay, moving on. Number 4 is the actor David Carradine, who was famous for his role in Kill Bill. He played the title role of Bill. By the way, David Carradine has a connection with somebody else already mentioned on this list. Can you tell me what that connection is? I'll come back to it in a minute. So Carradine was found dead in the closet of a Bangkok hotel room in 2009 when he was 72 years old, with cords wrapped around his neck, his wrists and his genitalia, apparently due to a dangerous sexual practice of autoerotic asphyxiation, which is where you kind of cut off the air supply to increase sexual pleasure, or potentially he was just practicing a very edgy and unique magic trick that went wrong. What a way to go, and must have led to what I can only imagine to be a horrifically awkward eulogy. So what was Carradine's connection? It was, of course, to Bruce Lee. So Carradine had the main role in this American TV series called Kung Fu, which first aired in October 1972, got a respectable 7.7 in IMDb. So that role was actually supposed to be, and was originally written for Bruce Lee, who obviously is a martial arts expert, but due to politics and racism, a white man, Carradine, kind of yellowed up to get the part. Is that a phrase, yellowed up? Am I allowed to say it? Let's just say yes. Let's say yes. Okay, let's just, another interjection. One of my favourite quotes is about death, as follows, and I quote, "The truth I've been seeking, this truth is death. Yet death is also a seeker, forever seeking me. So we have met at last, and I am prepared. I am at peace." That quote is also by a famous person. Dear viewers, can you tell me who this is? I will answer that later on in this episode. Give you a clue, it wasn't Kanye West. If it was Kanye West, he'd have probably said something like, yeah, death is also a seeker, but Beyonce is the best seeker of all time. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Number 3, Marvin Gaye. Amazing singer, amazing songwriter, influenced the entire sound of the Motowns in the 1960s, inspired entire genres of music for decades afterwards. Slightly unfortunate surname. And he gained the nicknames of the Prince of Motown and also the Prince of Soul. And I have to say, he actually inspired one of my nicknames, which is the Prince of Forensic Psychiatry, which I must admit is not going very well. I'm struggling to get much traction on it. Are you sure my name's not on the guest list? Can you check again? Dr. Das? No, the ominous Shahominous? The Prince of Forensic Psychiatry? No? All right, I'll just go home then. So Marvin Gaye did the song Sexual Healing, which in my opinion is one of the best songs of all time. And how did he die? His own father shot and killed him a day before Marvin was going to turn 45. So what was the whole context? Well, Little Gay and Big Gay had a long-standing conflict and arguments dating back to Little Gay's childhood. They apparently that day had argued over misplaced documents, and Marvin had beaten up his own father prior to his father getting a gun, shooting him dead to take revenge. What is equally as shocking in my view is that his father received 5 years of probation and no prison time after pleading guilty to manslaughter charges. So it must have been like, he must have proved that it was in the heat of the moment and that he was provoked. But still, to me, that's just mind-blowing. Okay, let's go back to that quote. "The truth I have been seeking, the truth is death, yet death is also a seeker, forever seeking me. So we've met at last, and I am prepared, I am at peace." Any guesses, anybody? Somebody that's already been mentioned in this episode. It was, of course, again, Bruce Lee. Okay, moving on. Death number 2, Kobe Bryant, who tragically died in January 2020. As you'll probably know, he's an 18-time NBA All-Star who's only 41 years old. And what happened, he was in his private helicopter in California. There was a small fire on board. The helicopter crashed. His 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, was also killed. 9 people were killed in total. Kobe Bryant, one of my favourite achievements of him was that he was only 17 years old when he won the dunk contest in '97, I believe. I have to say, I feel a kind of connection to Kobe Bryant and his outlook, his Mamba mentality, his work ethic, his perspective on life. I've even read his book, Mamba Mentality, and I actually sometimes watch videos about like interviews of him or stories about him, just to hear stories about his mentality, and it can be quite inspirational. I've mentioned him on other videos. In fact, I think I mentioned him on an AMA Ask Me Anything video on this channel about how and why he inspired me. By the way, I'd highly recommend that you go and check out my recent AMA 10K subscribers vid. Kid you not, there's actually a clip of me battle rapping another doctor on TV if that interests you. Okay, now the big reveal, the celebrity death that's number 1 on my list. And there's a reason that it's number 1, because there's a kind of connection with this person's death. I wasn't responsible, officer, okay? Can't prove anything, but there's an anecdote, a real life anecdote in my life that's kind of connected to his death, which is, before I tell you that, I'm first going to introduce you to this channel. My name is Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders in prisons and in courts and in psychiatric units. I give evidence as an expert witness in psychiatric cases. I am your favorite Asian British, London-based forensic psychiatry YouTuber, or at least in your top 3. You can call me the ominous Shahominous. This channel is a smorgasbord of issues related to mental illness and offending and the crossover between the two. Got videos on a whole load of things. Recently I've done a video on Michael Stone, who did this senseless random murder of this random family, and that actually changed the Mental Health Act to create a new diagnosis called the Dangerous and Severe Personality Diagnosis. It's a long story, you just got to watch the video. I've also done another video on the psychology of domestic violence. I've done another video about suicide and whether it's selfish, pros and cons for that argument, and my opinion. Generally, I do a full fat, scripted, properly edited video like this one, released on a Tuesday and a Friday. And some days when I have time, I do shorter, spontaneous, poorly edited videos because they're edited by me instead of professionally. And if you watch the videos, you'll see that I've got the computer skills of a blind geriatric with senile dementia. So if you're a fan of true crime or mental illness, then you've got to go check my channel. I implore you to subscribe, because not only does it help me out immensely, but it stops your underwear kind of riding up the back of your pants, you sort of waddling around uncomfortably all day. Okay, back to the video. My number 1 celebrity death is Steve Irwin, Australian ex-animal expert, TV personality, the crocodile hunter. You know my Steez. He's very passionate, really positive kind of energy, very likable vibe, and he did not fear death, because one of his quotes was, and I quote, "I have no fear of losing my life. If I have to save a koala or a crocodile or a kangaroo or a snake, mate, I will save it." And ironically, he died after a stingray bar pierced his chest whilst he was filming an underwater documentary. He died on the 4th of September 2006. Okay, if you're interested, I promise, I swear on your kids' lives. Now, I swear to God, this is true. This is a very bizarre anecdote, but this is true. So I lived in Australia around the time that Steve Irwin died, and I dabbled in stand-up comedy. I was just like an open micer, and I entered a new comics competition called Green Faces. And there were 10 heats all around Australia, a couple in Sydney where I lived. I won my Sydney heat. I'm being perfectly honest, the competition wasn't really that stiff. I just about won it, but I didn't think my set was that strong. I had to go to the finals, which were being held in Canberra 2 days after Steve Irwin died. I knew for a fact I wasn't going to win with my material because I'd seen one of the other contestants, a man who, by the way, is called Troy Kinney, K-I-N-N-E, who now is a kind of famous comedian, and he's got his own TV show, sketch show in Australia. Anyway, back then he was also an amateur comic, and I knew I had to go up against him, and I'd seen his act on a free DVD on the Australian FHM at the time, and I knew he was so much better than me. So the point I'm trying to make is that I knew I wasn't going to win, so I did something extremely ballsy. Instead of taking my 10-minute set, which I practiced over the space of about a year, to the competition knowing I was going to lose, I wrote an entirely new 10-minute sets of stand-up, which, trust me, is a very hard and risky thing to do, all about Steve Irwin dying, about his death. I've got to be honest, the jokes were horrific now in retrospect. I thought they were funny at the time, obviously, but now looking back, they just weren't. They were quite... they weren't very tasteful. They were quite distasteful, I have to say, quite insulting. I'm embarrassed and I'm cringe about it now. I just didn't really understand back then. I did an entire sketch about how he abused crocodiles because to find out the sex of a crocodile, you have to put your finger up its backside. And like crocodile tears, Crocodile and Oprah talking about how Steve Irwin abused him. It was bad. And this is the funny part of the story, I kind of assumed in my mind that Steve Irwin was a bit of a national laughingstock, but I didn't realise that he was a national treasure when he died. Somebody who's brown like me with an English accent, as you can guess, did not go down very well with the crowd. I got booed off, I kid you not, I had bottles being hurled at me, didn't even get through about 3 minutes of my set. Had to leave, security had to take me away from this venue, which had a couple of hundred angry Australians baying for blood, and I had to go around the back and leave the competition early. Weird, bizarre anecdote, but I swear to God it's true. Anyway, back to the episode. In conclusion, what did we learn today? We learned about 7 interesting and kind of unusual celebrity deaths. We've learned that I've got terrible taste when it comes to last-minute decision-making in stand-up comedy pressure situations. And we learned that Kanye is kind of on the narcissistic side. Okay, it's time for me to finish. Just want to tell you about my book, Into Mind. It's going to be released on the 10th of March. You got to cop a copy. I delve into my career as a forensic psychiatrist. It's kind of semi-autobiographical. I don't tell you the story about Steve Irwin because there's just, actually, I did write that in the original draft, but it got cut up by my editors because it was too waffly and too long, as you probably will appreciate. But it's got lots of stories about my life and the patients I've assessed and different aspects of forensic psychiatry, such as working in prisons and in courts, blah, blah, blah. It's also got an Audible version, which will come out on the 10th of March, I believe. I'll also be attending CrimeCon and speaking on various panels. I'll give you more details about this, dear viewers, nearer the time. I implore you to share my channel, please, amongst your friends and your enemies. I need more subs, I need more attention, I need more love because I wasn't hugged enough as a child. That's all I have to say, apart from, of course, I want you to stay euthymic, and whatever happens, please do not forget. I love you.